Welcome to Rising Woman Leaders. I'm your host, Meredith Ram, and I believe the time has come for women to share their gifts, their voice, and their stories. I love seeing women spiritually and financially empowered, thriving in their life's work, and doing what they love every day. I've gathered a community of women living their dreams to tell us their stories and inspire us to step into more courage, self-love, and feminine leadership. If you like this podcast, use the hashtag RisingWomanLeaders. Follow me on Instagram at Meredith Ram and sign up for email updates at risingwomanleaders.com to get all the new and inspiring content. Now get cozy with a journal and a cup of tea. I hope you enjoy today's show. I'm here today with Casey Baker, who shares unconventional wisdom on how to liberate your voice from fear and self-doubt in order to speak your truth and change the world. Previously, she was an investment banking analyst and assistant for 2 U.S. senators. She is now an international women's thought, leadership, and public speaking trainer, a speechwriter, and 2-time TEDx speaker, and is renowned for her unorthodox and highly effective methodologies. Casey believes that the key to positive transformation in our world lies in supporting women in unleashing the brilliance of their voices. She supported thousands of women around the world, finding their freedom, confidence, and clarity to speak up and create change. Her clients are women entrepreneurs, corporate leaders, authors, founders, Olympians, TEDx speakers, TED speakers, politicians, nonprofit social change makers. She's also a graduate of University of Pennsylvania and a lover of dance, singing, and nature. She is now living full-time in Sedona, Arizona, and also comes and visits the Bay Area occasionally and is a proud mother of her son, Connor. Thanks for being here, Casey.
Thank you for having me. I feel really lucky and honored to be invited.
Yeah. I had the honor of participating in Speak Up for Your Business, one of your online courses. And I was following that program to a T. I loved the information. I wrote a speech during that course. This was probably 1.5 years, maybe 2 years ago. And actually delivered that speech. And that was such a transformative experience for me. And the voice is something I talk a lot about in this podcast, and just supporting women to come into their voices and to believe in themselves and their message. Because I know personally just how transformative that journey has been for me. And so the first question I wanted to ask you is just like, have you always felt comfortable on the stage? Like, what has your experience been as a public speaker?
Well, to be on stage can take many different forms, right? So, since I was little, I loved, dancing for friends and family. That was kind of where it started. And then when I was in high school, my dad, I grew up in a public speaking home. And so my dad was the national debate champion. He won the Harvard and the Stanford. You can imagine growing up with a father like that. I mean, I had to have like full-blown presentations by the time I was 15 for like anything I wanted. But he worked with me in writing talks that I would then go out and run for student council this and student council that. And I would always have these epic speeches as like this 16-year-old running for office, But, it was interesting because when I graduated from college, I think it was during college, and it's a time where in our society there's incredible statistics and research about how they've done research on valedictorians that are boys and girls graduating from high school, and evaluating them have very similar, comparable sense of self-esteem and confidence levels. But in college, those same group of people, of the guys, tends to stay the same, and the girls, it just is this downward spiral. Mm-hmm. And it's a real epidemic in our culture, and I was part of that epidemic. And just the body shame, and I think just so much that comes with blossoming into being a woman in our culture. There's a lot of there's a lot of suffering and confusion that goes on, and that was my experience. And when I came out of college, I felt so held back. I went into investment banking, but it was a male-dominated environment, and I felt like I had no voice. I felt intimidated. I felt that it was very hard to make myself heard. And of course, I internalized that to mean that something was wrong with me. And so I left investment banking. And, during that time, I went on a real spiritual quest. I got into yoga and meditation, and I traveled the world for like 4 years. And during that time, I really had what I can only describe as the voice of who I really am come through. Not just the voice that I had been trained to feel confident in, which is the voice of great analysis and being able to put together other people's ideas and other people's thoughts, but the voice that was like my own unique perspective and wisdom on things. That was a very new voice for me. And I felt so much longing to share it, but I felt so much intense self-doubt, shame, fear of rejection. And who am I to speak like this? Like, who am I to say these kinds of things? And the suffering around that was enormous. And I eventually had great blessings in my life of having insights and liberation around that, which has given birth to the work that I do today. But what I will say in answer to your question is that I always felt encouraged, and I always felt supported in speaking a certain aspect of my voice. But when it came to the voice of truth within, the voice that is uniquely our own, that's the one that was so hard to own. And it is still my quest. It is still my quest. I've come a long way, but it is still my quest. And I'm on that journey with now thousands of other women through this work. But I think it's one of the great heroine's journeys of a woman's life, is claiming that voice of truth within and owning the value of it and her right to share it.
Yes. And there's a lot of vulnerability there, because we care about it so much.
So much. And so many of the things that at this time that we as women, especially the more in tune we become with our bodies, with the wisdom of our bodies, with our bodies not as sources of things to be commoditized or just evaluated for attractiveness, that it's actually profound intelligence in our bodies, that the kinds of perspectives and insights and wisdom and knowing that we have in this day and age, a lot of that stuff is revolutionary, and it's stuff that's essential in our time. So it takes us standing in the value of these ideas, even though they may not be the main cultural paradigm, even though the ideas that we have may be things that have not been, nothing that we have seen before. And that takes incredible bravery and devotion.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed that in your teachings, just bringing in the element of the feminine and bringing in some of those unconventional ideas of like the pre-stage ritual, or just different things that we can do to be in our queen and to really take that stage. So I had done Toastmasters for a little over 2 years before taking your course. And I learned a lot there, and I'm really grateful for it. And it's very masculine. It's very structured to a T. It's so everyone's in their business suits, everyone. And I would see some women go up there, and I just wanted to ask them, like, when they were done, like, how did that feel for you? And what was that like? And there was no space for that. So I just wanted to ask about your, bringing those unconventional pieces of wisdom and listening to your truth and bringing in the feminine. What has that been like? And what have you seen in women as you share those teachings?
Well, first of all, I've had to get really okay with being odd because a lot of the teachings that I teach are, that you're not going to learn them in Toastmasters or anywhere else. It's really unconventional stuff. But so before years ago, after I went traveling, right, I left the investment banking world and finance, and I went traveling, and I got really into meditation. And I also got really into a lot of tantric yoga and meditation practices and philosophy. And some people think tantra, which is sex, but it's actually an incredible lineage of wisdom and insight that really understands so deeply the interconnectedness of all things. And that through embodiment is where we find our deepest liberation and the deepest wells of wisdom and knowing, and also through connection. And so that era, and it's still, that's a very huge part of my life still, but that really opened me. And for a long time, I studied very intensively, understanding how feminine energy flows. And when you can tell when a woman is really connected in with that river, really of deep embodied intelligence, it's an intelligent flow. And there's a way that when we're connected with it, we speak from it, you can feel it. There's a quality of presence and aliveness that it emanates from. And so I worked with that for so many years on the physical and the energetic level, that when my life and my work transitioned into the work that I'm doing today, initially I was a spoken word artist, and I was out there speaking about women and the planet, and I developed a bit of a following around it, and women began to come to me and like, can you help me? Can you help me share my voice? And I'm like, I think so. And both from the liberation standpoint of the mind to feel free, but also understanding how to like get into this zone of this embodied intelligence and just opening into that when you speak publicly and connect publicly, that all those practices of those years, it just intuitively came of, okay, this is how we need to move and kind of like play with different ways of putting attention on things in our body, that all of a sudden just opens this well of inner safety and deep knowing and restedness in ourselves, and the freedom to just be genuine and speak from that place. And so it was a lot of trust initially of that, those insights coming through, and trusting people to be like, okay, imagine you have a tail and just trust me, just do it. And people being like, okay. And then they do it. And then it's like, oh my gosh, that is the most radically incredible thing. And so these practices that are very strange, but they work. And so it took a lot of leap of faith of trusting the inner guidance within to say them in the first place. But then it just compounded my sense of freedom and confidence in sharing them, because they just worked. And now we have people all over the world who practice these practices, but they really work. And so, yeah, a lot of deep trusting of that coming through initially.
Yes. So I think one thing that most people struggle with public speaking is the intensity of sensations.
Yes.
So like you're about to go up on the stage, or you're in a circle and everyone's introducing themselves, and it's about to be your turn, and suddenly the heart is beating, the palms are getting sweaty, the adrenaline's running. And you had such an amazing shift in perspective around that. Could you share with us about that shift?
Yes, it's I'm sure anybody who's listening to this who has ever been either about to get on stage and speak in front of a group, or like you said, sitting in a meeting and you're waiting your turn, it's intense. For me, it feels like a million bombs going off inside my body. It's crazy. It's just crazy. And so I really can relate. I have so much compassion for the intensity of that experience. And most people think that it's fear, and that it's something to try to say. Really what most people think is that they have to, that feeling is somehow they have to make it go away in order to feel the freedom to share their voice or whatever. Like that discomfort with that feeling is something that they're kind of victimized by and want to make go away. And so this is, I feel, when you look at it from a pure energetic standpoint, it switches everything. And so what I think is important to see is to, like, first of all, if you're listening to this, you can just imagine that you're standing in front of an audience of people. Like I'm imagining that right now. Like I'm here, there's a big audience of people in front of me, and just looking at the pure energetics of it, there's all these people And even if it's just a group of 10 people sitting in a circle and you're waiting your turn to share, or you're speaking in front of a group, their eyes, their presence, their attention is focused on you. And even though you can't see it physically, unless you're like some kind of crazy clairvoyant, your system feels it, because it's like an ocean of just intense life force energy, essentially focused, present attention coming at you. And you're just one person standing there. And so in order for you to not get just totally blown over by it, your system does something incredible for you. And what it does is it starts to send you more energy, right? So the analogy I like to use is that you get plugged into a socket and life just starts sending bucket loads of just pure chi into your system, so that you have more presence, you have more actual energy in your system, in your body, so that you can effectively meet and match the intensity of the energy that's coming at you from the audience. So when you do that, the reason, partly the reason why life does that for us, because it really is a gift, is it allows then what we say and our energy to have impact, to have influence, to have juice, so that it can affect people's listening. So it's really a superpower. So that thing that's inside of your body that most of us call fear of public speaking, it's actually the very real feeling of your power. That's what your power feels like. It's not comfortable. But the secret that we then dive into very deeply in the work that we do with Woman Speak is that then we explore, okay, we embrace that. We realize that's a part of ourselves that we're getting access to in that moment. It's not some foreign invader you have to get rid of. And it feels intense, but there are ways to open into it that allow it to, it's not that it makes it go away, but your relationship to it changes. So that instead of the massive resistance and the fear of it, all of a sudden there is an allowing and an opening, and something changes in that. And that's really what it's the experience of grace. It's the aspect of us that as women, and this is where we do a lot of practices that are really harness the intelligence of our ability to feel into things. Is one of our superpowers as feminine creatures. And it's how we be with expanded states of power and intensity, that feeling into, it's almost like a sensuality of feeling into. It sounds like a sexual thing, I'm saying, but it's like a sensing into, a leaning into, a yesing it so much that then you are so liberated to be in that intensity and to just fully be yourself. So that's a big part of what we focus on.
Yeah. Yeah. So last summer I was asked to speak at my grandmother's memorial. So something very close to my heart. And I said yes, thinking it would be family and some close friends. And it was literally like 2 or 3 days before. I hadn't really been in touch with my family there in Minnesota, where my dad grew up. And they let me know, we decided we're having this big lunch after, with, inviting the whole town, this small town. And we decided to invite everyone to the memorial service too. So suddenly it was like 150 people I found out were going to be in this church.
Wow.
And I was going up to the podium, and I had said yes already that I was going to be speaking. And I only wrote the speech, I think it was a day or two before. I kept trusting that it would come. And it did. It flowed through. And it was all about like the gifts that my grandmother had brought to me over my life. And I remember being in my seat because I had that new idea of like, okay, this is my power. I'm saying yes to this. I'm saying yes to this. And it was so intense, feeling it run through my body, kept breathing. And I went up there and I gave that speech, and it was magic. It was like, I felt so comfortable up there. I felt like I was delivering something I cared so much about. The people that came up to me that day afterwards, it was like people were holding my hands and looking in my eyes and just saying, thank you. Like, thank you so much. And I realized I had given this whole speech about the gifts my grandmother had given to me. And there, in the act of delivering that speech was such a gift. like another gift that she had given to me.
That's really beautiful. It moves me to tears. That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and so amazing, when we say yes to that. And so I grew up with just tremendous fear of sharing my voice, and particularly around the body sensations and how I wanted to push them away. And this is not okay. Even to the point where actually, like I saw a psychiatrist when I was in college about it. And, he was wanting to have me think about like beta blockers, which are something that suppress the body's natural functions of this energy that can be so intense. But like having the ability to say yes to that, so powerful. And I know there are so many women that have this fear, and they have the doubt too of like, I don't know what I would say, or I know I have something I want to say, but I have this fear. What is your advice for them of like getting started or believing in what they have to say, being willing to be with the fear, or to change their ideas around it?
Yeah. Yes. So first of all, I just want to say that if you're feeling that, anybody who's listening to this, you have something that you really want to talk about in your life, whatever it is, but there's so much fear that comes up, or the intense doubt about who are you to do this. It's so natural. It's so natural. I think that happens for almost everyone. Whether you're a public speaker or you're a performance artist, even super famous rock stars report like that. Just doubt is a part of the creative process. Fear of emerging with something new is a part of the creative process. It just happens. And that it's important to have these reframes around it, right? That really help us to understand the purpose of those, of how they're supporting us. Like I have just a very clear saying that every single thing that happens in life, internally and externally, is designed for our empowerment. Everything. And when we can see that, how deeply life is in service to us, and sometimes it can be really hard to find how that's true, but it is. And there are, in this circumstance, the way that I find finding the freedom and liberation, even when it feels intense, even when you have all these intense thoughts of rejection going on in your mind, the way through and the liberation is always compassion. Compassion. So the thing to do always, and this is where in this work we always start when we get into a lot of content creation, which is a big part of what we do in Women Speak. It's not just the public speaking; it's the clarifying the message, the shifts in ideas, the story, the shifts in perspectives, the insights, the stories, the talks, right? How that all that weaves together. We always start from connecting to who is this for, and why does it matter so much? And what do I want for them or for this thing that's happening in the world? And when we get centered in that, it leads us into the heart of our mind. And that's where all this wisdom and freedom comes from, to be able to get out there and share it and to be so real and vulnerable. You don't have to perform over that fear or that doubt, right? You just can sink into your connection to who this is for, what it is that you want for them or for that aspect of life or the world, and why does it matter so much? And when you every time you sink into that space, and that's a place where, I advise, if you're speaking up in meetings, if you are about to give a talk, if you're about to deliver some kind of communication, every time you can connect in with that feeling first, that clarity, that knowing, who is this for? Why does it matter so much? And what do I want for them? That you find freedom to rest in that place of the simple power of caring and the compassion. And that's also the well of where all your best ideas come from. Like in Tibetan Buddhism, they talk about how compassion and wisdom are on opposite sides of the same coin. So whenever we connect into our compassion is the ultimate liberator. And whenever we connect into that compassion, we also connect into the wisest element of our minds, where it leaves that place where we're so concerned about ourselves. which is so human, but it's a place where I call innocent narcissism, right? It's just this, it's innocent. It just happens, but we're so consumed with how am I going to look? What will they think? Will they reject me? Will what I want to do get accepted? Like all those things. It's so normal to think those. So your freedom from all of that and from the resistance that all of that can create and the stagnation is to come into the heart of the mind and connect to your compassion and to make a commitment from that place to being a stand for whatever it is that you want to speak about, whether it's, in service to your grandmother's life, something, and to everyone else's connection to that and care for that, right? Or to some cause that you're speaking about, or some vision that you have of what's possible in the world, or some innovation that you see as possible through business. That compassion and the commitment will always set us free. It's a power so much, it's love. And it's so much greater than the fear and the resistance, but we got to consciously connect in with it. And then we can create and lead from that place.
Yeah. Yeah. Holding ourselves in all the feelings, in all the fear, and then dropping into something deeper of just connecting to the people we want to give to.
Yes.
Yeah.
So true. So true. So it's, and that takes inner work. Sometimes we think, I'm just going to skip that part. That part's just kind of the lame spiritual part. Whatever. I'm going to get right into writing the talk or doing the thing. And then we're spinning in the wheels of the resistance oftentimes, or the confusion, or it's worth it to do it. Every time we do it, moves mountains.
Yes. And that's the power of dropping from the mind to the heart. Me too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about your birth experience and what you learned from that?
I love you asking about this because I was just thinking about it as you were asking about this. Yeah, so it's been, it'll be 5 years this November. I'm still integrating.
Yeah.
I gave birth at home in Sedona. I labored outside for part of it, a big part of it. And I was in labor for 26 hours, which actually for a first-time birth, more I think I was pretty standard, but it was, the most intense experience of my entire life experience so far. And it was in the first section of it. Well, I'll say this, the part that I think is most relevant to share, because there were so many, it was such a transformational shamanic experience for me. And I probably at about 20 hours in, 23 hours in, something like that. It's like getting towards the end there, but man, it had been going on for a while and I was tired. And my baby finally was about, they call it like it's like the transition moment when the baby's head is about to start to go through the actual birth canal, go through the cervix, through the vagina, right? And wow, I will never forget. I was at that point. It was night. It was Halloween night. No, it was Samhain. It was the day after Halloween, which is the Day of the Dead, or All Saints Day, Samhain. And it was about, it was nighttime. It was dark. And I was in the lower bedroom of the house in the dark with David and with my midwife and my midwife's assistant. So Shell and Danielle, it's 4 of us. And I just was so consumed by this endless, overwhelming feeling of total doubt that I could do this. Like, how the F is this going to happen? How this is my first time giving birth, right? It's like, how is this child, human being, going to make its way out of my body? How is this going to happen? And the unbelievable doubt. And I hear this is very common for women in that moment of transition, right? When the baby starts making its way down, there's something that's a consistent experience for most women out there, that the feelings and the experience of doubt is enormous. And I remember feeling that I just kept saying, I don't think I can do this. Oh my God, I can't do this. oh my God, I cannot do it. I mean, just the shock and the doubt. And finally, my midwife looked at me and said, you are doing this. And it was just like the word of God looking right and like imprinting itself in front of me. I was like, oh my God, this is what doing it looks like. Feeling incredible doubt. And it's still happening. And that was the moment that I realized that doubt is an essential part of the creative process. Like, doubt doesn't actually exist outside of the creative process. You have to be in the creative process in order to experience doubt about your ability to do it. And if that lets you know I'm actually in the creative process, whether it's the beginning or somewhere in the middle or right at the end and you're about to birth the baby or the book or the song or the speech or the whatever it is, that doubt is an essential part of the whole thing. Like, it's just part of the nature of it. And when I realized that, it was just like this like zooming out experience of understanding part of the nature of the creative experience, because in that moment, it was like, oh, something opened inside, like a space opened up that was bigger. And I could feel the intensity of the doubt and also the knowing that this was happening. And it both can exist at the same time. And what got me through was complete surrender. And there was no other choice. There actually was no other choice. I remember standing in the shower thinking about all of the things that I had created in my life. The tragedy of it, actually, it hurts to talk about it. All the things that I had created in my life, that at the moment before I was about to put them out into the world, I abandoned them. But this was one thing. I wasn't getting out of this. This baby was getting out of my body. And life wasn't, I mean, this was the one. And it was just this, then like this continual surrender into just the pure primal, yes, there is no other choice. This is happening. And eventually giving birth. And that experience really changed my entire relationship to creativity. It had me see that the thoughts of doubt are not the final word of God. And it gave me access to a deeper strength in my creative process. Like a year and a half later, I put out a children's music album, which for me, singing was always laden. And it still is. Like, there's just his voice of like, that's not very good. That's not as good as so-and-so. Who would think that was good? It's just constant, right alongside the singing. And the only thing that allows that voice to relax is a deeper surrender into my in the moment complete openness and devotion to the experience of the song and the feeling of it. And then in that space, there is nothing else. And that allowed me to complete that project of creating this music album for my child, which was a huge deal because I had created so much music in the past on little recordings on my computer, on my phone, all these dreams of doing stuff with it. And I had never done anything with it for years. And it was a place of enormous suffering for me. So now I can birth things with greater spaciousness for the doubt, which I know is coming. If doubt comes, it doesn't mean it's wrong or that it's bad or that you shouldn't do it. It's just part of the process. And it's an invitation to surrender deeper into the love and why you're doing it.
Yes. We can allow it. We can allow the doubt to be there.
Yeah. Totally.
It's going to be so liberating for so many to hear that.
So I wrote a blog post about this after my kid was born, probably 2 months after, and I hadn't done any writing or anything after my kid was born. It was the first thing. And I only had like 30 minutes, between nap. And I just like wrote the story and wrote this blog post about this story. And it was definitely my most shared thing I've ever written. And I think it's because, it's such a human, universal place of suffering is the experience of doubt and confusion around it. And so, yeah.
Thank you for sharing the whole story.
Thank
so
you for
beautiful.
asking. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I love talking about that one.
Yeah. Yeah. And so for women out there who have this inkling that they want to share their voice, but they're not clear on their message, what would you say to them? What kind of tips or exercises or ideas could you give them around that?
Well, the first thing that I would say is, first of all, get away from the computer. Get outside. Get out in nature. Go dance. Move your body in a way that's not like, like I go do bar classes and I do all that. Not that stuff. Not that stuff. Go get into a place where you feel connected to the flow of life and nature inside yourself or outside in the wild world. You guys need some water. And then from that place, I think it's to really connect in. I mean, that's the place where we really connect to our deepest knowing and what's really most essential. And from that place, I would ask yourself questions like, first of all, connecting into what is it that the compassion inside, what is it that you really care about, that you want to transform in the world, or that you have vision around another way that's possible. Right? And that could be something in the, interpersonal, psychological, spiritual realms. It could be something that you see that's happening in organizations or companies, that's happening more in organizational or community levels. Like this is or political levels, like whatever that is for you. Whatever that is for you, it's the intersection of where you feel both care and compassion about the confusion or the suffering that's currently happening in the space or the inefficiency. But you have vision of another way that's possible. You have a sense of another way that is possible, something you've already either experienced directly or that you just know could be. And then from that place, does talking about that or serving the fulfillment of that vision in the world, does that light you up? Does that make you feel alive in your body? Does that bring experience of aliveness and flow and joy inside your body? Right? That's another place to vet, because oftentimes we can get into stuff that's very intellectual and heady, but it doesn't actually create aliveness in our bodies. And if it doesn't create aliveness in your bodies, I mean, I will, if for anybody who has launched anything, run anything in their life, they know what I mean. If you haven't yet embarked on your own venture, it is so important to know that passion is important. But the experience of passion and aliveness in your body for what you're creating is the thing that will get you through the hard times. Because there are always hard times. They happen. Growth sometimes is hard. Not knowing what to do next is hard. Cash flow stuff sometimes is hard. Like this is, and there's ways to transform all of those, but it's the passion and the care and the experience of the fulfillment of your body on some level as women that is so important for us to connect into when we're leaning into what direction do I choose when I choose what message to serve or what realm of work to embark upon. So those are the things that I would say: get connected in with your body, get connected in with nature, go jump in the river, and then ask yourself these questions. What am I feel so much deep care about where there is confusion or suffering? What is the vision of what I know is possible? And does serving this really truly light me up in my body? Yes or no? And from that place, that's the inception point of then, okay, let's do a deeper dive into the wisdom and find the heart of the message that's there, the shifts in perspective, the insights, the stories, all of that then makes up the body of the message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have to be fully on board, even with our bodies, everything, to be there through the hard times of whatever might come up.
It's true. And then from that place, I'll give one really clear exercise then to start to capture some of those ideas. So let's say you're like, yes, there is something that you care about deeply. You have a vision of another way that you see as possible. And so I want to start to glean some of the insights and the ideas that's here in this. So one thing I would suggest that you do is write down and you can do this on a paper right now if you're listening. You can write down, most people think or believe X. Okay, whatever that is, whatever X is, right? But the reality or the truth is whatever that is, Y, right? And write down as many of those as you can. Like, for instance, you heard me today speak about, most people think that that intensity you feel in your body before public speaking is just fear. And it's something terrible that's happening to me. I'm victimized by this. I have to make it go away in order to feel free to speak up. But the reality is that it's the feeling of your power. And the secret is just to say yes to it, lean into it, and you will find so much freedom in that intensity. And so it's like that. That's one of the shifts in perspectives in my work that I share a lot. And so what are yours? And creating this list, like take like 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes and create as many of those as you can. Those are gems. You know, when you're out there as a thought leader, this is your inventory, right? These are the goods in your work, in your business, are your insights, your shifts in perspective, the things that can meet people where they're at with how they see things in the world, and then how they can then see things in a new way that opens up a whole new world of possibility for them. So that's the place to start. Then there's a whole process of how to narrow it down to like, what's the core? But that's an amazing place to start.
I love that exercise. Thank you. And for anyone that's looking to find places to speak or to set up engagements or to get themselves out there, what do you suggest for that?
Well, two things. First of all, go to WOMAN speak.com, and you can find a local circle in your area to practice all these practices that we do with public speaking. It's both the public speaking practices, plus it's getting clear on what your message is. It's learning how to write and deliver short form, powerful talks, longer form talks, and to do it in our community is what makes it so powerful. I mean, Women Speak has this incredible community where we practice something called fertile listening. And that's listening for someone in such a way that they cannot help but blossom in your presence. And it's a very active part of our culture. And women really feel profound psychological safety to fully be themselves, to allow aspects of their voice and their wisdom to emerge and be seen and heard and celebrated, and then cultivated and developed and refined. And it's an incredible thing. So you can find a circle in your community, or you can start one. We pay leaders to run their circles. So this is an amazing thing to do, and it's a lower cost investment of getting consistent practice, which is really important in public speaking, and that's why we created this. So that's the first place, and then you can also get information there on thewomanspeak.com or kcbaker.com on how to. I work with people a lot in both writing their talks. That's a huge part of my business. I'm a speechwriter, and I work with incredible women leaders all over the world in writing just phenomenal talks, and then in landing speaking engagements. And so we both have opportunities to do that privately and in group format. So that's where I would say is start with going to womanspeak.com. Check out the circles. We also have something called the Foundation Course, which is a weekend intensive, which is an amazing thing in a small group to get clear in your message and learn our practices. So lots of different ways, but so you can go there and cruise around.
Yes, I love the in-person element of having women hear each other and see each other and feel each other in those moments, especially when first blossoming, first coming out with their voices.
So true. Me too. Me too. That's why we do it, because great virtual realm, awesome, but man, we need in-person community.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially for something that's an in-person thing like public speaking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And everything I can say too that I learned in your course, so good for like webinars and everything. You're doing interviews like this, just leaning into the trusting your voice in all of those ways, or improvising, or not needing to stick exactly to a script. Such amazing tools.
It's true. It's true. It's true. There's just infinite opportunities these days to share your message. And we live in a world where people are known now for their message and what they stand for. So having clarity on that is it's the highest leverage thing you can do to move forward your work or your business, to become known in that way. So it's a valuable thing to invest energy into, getting that clarity and freedom.
Yes. Yes. And you have a free gift for us. It's the 4-part video series, Speak Your Truth, Change the World. So we're going to include that link, speakup.caseybaker.com. Do you want to share a little about it?
Yeah, that's a great one. It's a 4-part series where you really learn some of the core practices that we teach in Woman Speak. Some of they are unusual, but they work, and how to find internal safety to speak up in any environment, how to find the clarity, and how to really open the room from a place of not performing into it, but just being so fully yourself, rested in yourself. And how do you hold the dynamism of that? So those videos will support you in that.
Yay. And anything else coming up in your business that you're excited about that you want to share?
So first of all, our circles are growing like crazy. We now have about 80 leaders around the United States. And I'm about to go on speaking tour in Australia and do a bunch of Women Speak regional events throughout Australia, which I'm super excited about. We've got Australians who are just totally loving this. But we've also got, for people who want to come do a deep dive with me, there's a 3-day intensive called the Foundation Course that we're doing in Australia the last weekend of June. And then the last weekend of July in Sedona, here where I live in Arizona, and the weekend of September 14th in Sedona. So I highly recommend that. It's a very reasonable investment for what we're doing for that, and it's amazing. You'll come and get so much deep freedom and clarity on your messaging, and how to turn that into a short form, how to deliver that message very clearly and powerfully and captivating any setting. So that I definitely recommend as well. And that's on Woman, WOMAN, speak.com. You can get information on that under live events.
Wonderful. So many beautiful offerings, and so grateful to have this time to speak with you and to hear your stories. Do you have any closing words for us before I just end this call with a short prayer?
I love that you end it with a prayer. I think closing words would be that at this time, we are so, it's an incredible time to be alive. And the civilization is transforming, and it's transforming in the direction of an integration of feminine perspective, which comes from women and men. But it is a perspective that is connected to a reverence for life, essentially, a deep appreciation for life and how that looks in every capacity and how that shapes our civilization. And so a lot of those ideas are ideas that we oftentimes are new. They are radical at this time. They are not conventional. And if you're having ideas and insights and wisdom that you're wanting to share, both from a message standpoint or business or foundation you're wanting to put out there, just know that, first of all, that if you know it will create positive transformation in some way, you're on the right track. And even if you haven't seen or heard those ideas to that extent, or if there's someone out there sharing them already, and you're like, who am I to do it? We need you to do it, because we need your unique essence at this time combined with that message, so the people who are opened by you can really be open to this. And so it takes faith. It takes faith, and you need community of people who really see you. And so find those people. We offer that through Women Speak, but whoever or whatever that is, find those people who see you, that recognize the value in this, and be brave, because we need your ideas and your voice at this time so much.
So let's just breathe that in and invite you to just close the eyes and feel your heart. If we are receiving these insights and this higher wisdom and guidance to share our voices, and if we see things in the world that could really use our efforts or our ideas to create change, to trust that there is something that we can do, that we can shift by using our voices and by telling our stories and by speaking up about those places. So I invite everyone listening just to breathe in whatever resonated for you today, whatever you're going to take with you, whatever journaling you're going to do after this conversation. Just take that into your heart. So may we honor the inner feminine, our higher guidance, our hearts. May we honor the incredible wisdom that can come through us through sharing our voices. And may we continue to create the communities that are uplifting and supportive of women in sharing their truth. So I'll just bring my hands to my heart and just bow with such gratitude for all of Casey's wisdom. So grateful to have her here today. And to all of you listening, thank you and namaste. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to our show today. We would love to hear what you think. Take a moment to hop on over to iTunes and leave us a review. We'd be so grateful to receive it. Until next time, namaste.